Thank you for downloading this RealAgriculture podcast. Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more at excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Hey, and if you're new to the program, welcome to the RealAg community. We are a very friendly place discussing issues from a whole bunch of different angles. It is great to have you. And please, everybody, if you're a long-time follower and listener, please continue to tell your friends and your family, anybody that you know is interested in agriculture in North America, this is the place to be. Well, Friday I wasn't here, and Lindsay, I'm so appreciative that she covered to be here on Friday to host the program. There's no way I could. I had a horrible travel day on Thursday. It wasn't even weather related. It was just mechanical. I was in Kansas City for the National Association of Farm Broadcasting meeting. Had a great time. Over the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear a bunch of the interviews that I had done at the NAFB meeting. And I love Kansas City. Kansas City is one of the most underappreciated. It is sneaky good. I love Kansas City. Great food, that Midwestern architecture. I really like Kansas City. It has always been one of my favorite places. I've actually never been, it's weird. I've been to Kansas City lots of times. Never been to St. Louis. But everybody says that Kansas City's better. Maybe some of you got an opinion on that. But I really do like Kansas City. And so Thursday I was trying to get home, Thursday night, late. And I was all worried, going to be short sleep for Friday's show and just be tired. And so I'm late for my flight. Like, I'm having that Uber driver punch it. And he's being very cooperative, which I greatly appreciate. Get to the airport. I step out of the vehicle. Get a text message from Delta saying flight delayed. Well, here's the problem. Delayed an hour and 15 minutes, and I only have a 45-minute connection in Salt Lake. Shaun ain't getting home. So phoned the 1-800 Delta number. The lady was awesome. Ended up flying to Atlanta on Thursday night to get home Friday morning. And of course, I was in the air from Atlanta to Calgary during the show. So I just greatly appreciate Lindsay being able to cover. And otherwise I was like having to go to Salt Lake and stay like 48 hours because flights were all sold out. Crazy traveling. And winter's just beginning. Look how much I have to look forward to because I do have some travel on the schedule. But it is great to be with you here today. Lots to talk about. I'm going to try to work in some of the discussions that I had last week at the NAFB meeting. It's just a very, very cool experience. It was great to see all my farm broadcasting peers from across the U.S. That was fantastic. And also had a great supper on Wednesday night with AgriTalk host Chip Flory. Him and I went to a seafood restaurant. Oh, it was so good. So good. I think one of the unappreciated meals, when it's done right, is beef tartare. Ooh, controversial? I don't know. It is one of my favorite dishes. Beef tartare. Love it. If you have any specialty recipes with beef tartare, I'd love to hear them. My wife loves it too. So whenever we go to a restaurant, two things: bone marrow, love that, and beef tartare. Fantastic. I love bone marrow. That, an appetizer when you do the bone marrow. Oh, so good. So good. Love it. Okay. Today on the program, that's enough of all of that. Today on the program, It is Agronomic Monday. No Peter P. Johnson this week, but we got Josh Linville from StoneX. He's going to talk about the fertilizer markets because we're talking agronomics here on the Monday program. Fertilizer is a big part of it, and you got to get your pricing right. We'll also be joined by Kenny Piecharka. He is with KWS Seeds here in Canada. He's going to talk about some of the agronomic thinking around hybrid rye and a product spotlight. We'll also be joined by, we're going to talk to John Deere about some harvesting technology that they have. Some really cool stuff. It's going back a number of years, but now it's really in the market. And I've got some interesting thoughts about that. And then we're going to finish up with Charles Barron from FBN. And we're going to talk about using AI for agronomy. Where does it fit? Where does it not fit? Looking forward to that. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Was also excited last night. Watched the Grey Cup. Yeah. Toronto beating Winnipeg. What's with the Winnipeg play calling at the end of the game? That was brutal. Brutal. Ah, man. Just crazy. 4 interceptions, I think, in the fourth quarter. Yikes. Not good. But it was an exciting game. It was fun to watch. Blowout, but the game was closer than the final score because there was like 3 pick sixes by Toronto in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, anyway, fun Grey Cup. College football was awesome. NFL was, whatever. Bears lost again. No big surprise there. But I am really looking forward to college football coming up because we're getting the final 2 weeks. Final 2 weeks, everybody. My favorite sport. And there is just so much happening. And I wish I hosted a college football show. I would just have so much to talk about. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from Josh Linville of StoneX right after this.
I'm Lindsay Smith. Joining me with Genesis Fertilizer's Terry Drabout. So thinking about where things are priced from, but also where things potentially travel from, how does Genesis Fertilizer's proposed model address the logistical challenges?
There is very little product that comes from NOLA that hits Canada, mainly Ontario and Manitoba. NOLA is New Orleans, Louisiana, as I suspect most would know that. But if it does, it comes from the river, Mississippi, up to, say, St. Louis, into a transfer terminal, into a rail car, into a distribution house in Canada, and then distributed to retails. So lots of touch points and lots of costs. Genesis Fertilizers plans on building one plant, and that one plant is for Western Canadian farmers. Not only would the investors be entitled to the fertilizer that we produce, they would also profit from the fertilizer plant.
For anyone who's interested, how Genesis Fertilizers plans to deliver this, where can they go?
The best place is our website, genesisfertilizers.com.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Agronomic Monday. We're now going to talk about fertilizer with Josh Linville of StoneX. But first, I want to tell you about Excite Bio. Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more by going to Excite Bio's website, xitebio.ca. That's excitebio.ca. As I mentioned, Josh Linville of StoneX, I caught up with him last week in Kansas City at the National Association of Farm Broadcasting meeting. We found some space in the hallway and we talked about the fertilizer market. What does it mean right now for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash prices as we head into the 2025 growing season? Farmers are frustrated. It's sticky. What's going on?
They should be. You're right. Prices have been very sticky. Farm economics are not great. There's just not a lot of stuff to get excited about, especially after the last several years. When I look at the market today, I see kind of a quiet lull here for the next probably 30, 45 days, probably through the end of the year. I'm worried about some of the things playing out in Q1. There's some global issues I'm worried about. We're November 14th, and we barely turned a wheel here in the Midwest for fall application. That's starting to get me worried. So I think we'll enjoy this lull, but we better have our heads on a swivel and be ready to work, because come Jan 1, there's a lot of things starting to line up.
So is demand not, the poor economic situation from a profitability standpoint, is that not shaking demand at all to try to warrant these markets to drop a little bit on the fertilizer side?
On nitrogen and potash, no. Nitrogen, no. You've got to have the nitrogen in the soil to raise a crop. And we're still expecting 92 million acres of corn next year. Demand should be just as good as last year as it is this year. Potash, we don't expect any demand destruction because potash is really well priced. It's where it needs to be. Phosphate's the one we do think there's going to be some demand destruction, but our expectations of that destruction percentage is lowered because of a better crop out there. There's more bushels that they get to market. That's more nutrients removed from the soil. And any sort of destruction, I think, is going to be outshined by the tight supply situation. As long as we have the fall run that we think we're going to have, we're going to end this season in the U.S. very empty. Globally speaking, Chinese exports, we're fearing that those are going to be scaled back. India still has to rebuild their stockpiles. There's a lot of mouths to feed when it comes January, February.
Yeah. What are the hang-ups? What are the things that you're following right now where it's like, oh, this makes me a little bit queasy and uncomfortable?
The biggest one here at home today is, again, the fact that we haven't hardly turned a wheel. And there's a reason why we have a fall fertilizer run and a spring fertilizer run, because logistically we cannot do it all in one season.
Yeah.
Now, it's only the 14th. We can get this done. Last year we were going clear up until Christmas, and we can do that again this year. But anything past Thanksgiving is a gift. So you can't count on that. So that's what's going on here at home.
And haven't turned a wheel because it's been too warm?
It was too warm, too dry originally. Now it's too wet. Yesterday in Kansas City, it rained all day.
Yeah.
And it doesn't dry very much this time of year. Sun sets at 5:30. It's cooler out. You don't get the sun baking that moisture off the top of the field. So a rain today is going to keep that soil wet for a lot longer. We got another rain chance Sunday, Monday. It's going to hit a wide swath. You put one more rain in late next week or the week after, Thanksgiving week, and suddenly you're talking about December before you turn a wheel out there.
Right. Anything else on the concerning side of things?
Internationally, everybody's asking questions. What happens with the Trump administration? Is he going to rescind tariffs? Is he going to put on more tariffs? I am personally more worried that he is going to start butting heads with Putin over the Ukrainian invasion when he gets in, and his tool are tariffs. We already have tariffs as far as phosphate coming from Russia. Will he include potash? Will he include nitrogen? And then we got to worry about the Iran-Israel situation. Iran, people don't realize that. Iran exports of almost as much urea per year as China does. And Chinese exports are already almost non-existent. If we all of a sudden get into a situation where we lose Iran, we've lost 20% of the global export marketplace.
Why is the U.S. still buying potash from Russia when Canada's adjacent, key supplier of potash? Is it to keep the Canadians in check on pricing, or what's happening there?
I think there's a little bit of people want some of that, keeping them in check, a little bit more competition. But when you think about it, a lot of the where the potash is produced in Canada, there are some spots in the U.S. where it's better to bring a vessel from Russia, from the Black Sea, and hit, say, like the East Coast or someplace like that. So there's some regions where they're a little bit more competitive, but I think overall, people like the competition. Keep them honest.
I think one of the struggles, you just take Canadian potash out of the equation for a second. If you look at where a lot of fertilizer is produced in the world, it's in countries where you can argue there is not, at times, not a very good relationship with the United States.
Absolutely. You talk about Russia, Ukraine situation. That's a problem. Russia's a major exporter. China, we keep talking about, are they going to invade Taiwan? They're a major exporter of phosphate and urea. Middle East in general. 1 out of every 2 tons of urea exported in the world comes from North Africa to the Middle East. So yeah, you're right. Tumultuous areas, and who knows what those relationships look like over the next 2 to 4 years.
Especially some of the tariff amounts that are being thrown around. Like we're not talking about 3, 4, 5%, 10, 20, 100. There was even a 200 on one discussion. And some of that is hyperbolic and it's campaigning. So we got to we'll have to wait and see. But it's the amount. It's where it's not just the fact we have tariffs or going to have tariffs. It's the size of the tariff. I think that also is a larger concern than maybe it was, say, going back even in the first Trump administration.
Right, and when you've got a world that's oversupplied, you need a bigger tariff percentage to keep the product from coming. Look at phosphate. Morocco here for a while had a 2% tariff. And most people looked at it and said, of course they're going to bring everything they can. Not a single ton. The reason being, Morocco's sitting there looking at that 2% tariff and saying, why would I pay that? I have got mouths around the world to feed. There is more than enough demand around the world to take care of the stuff I produce. You can take your 2% and shove it. I don't have to pay it. If nothing else, they're proving a point that I can survive without you more than you can survive without me.
One of the tariff discussions, and you and I were texting while I was touring the nutrient potash mine. It was super cool. The pictures, everyone's just, I'm still amazed at how cool that trip was. But one of the things that came out of that discussion, 87% of the U.S. potash that is used comes from Canada, for example. And then I thought of the Trump tariffs, 10% on all products coming into the United States. Potash is one where you're like, oh yeah, that could never happen. I don't see is there any path where someone could justify putting a tariff on Canadian potash coming into the U.S. with how important that resource is?
I never want to say never. I don't think so. Yeah. But I would never say never.
People would be calling their congressman, their senator, like it would be insane. It's actually hard to imagine, but anyway.
Yeah, I think if you really want to hack off every single farmer, what is there, 2 million farmers in the U.S. market, and then you think about their friends and their family, that'd be a really good way to lose a lot of the popular vote just from one move. So I don't think it happens, but I'm not going to sit there and say it wouldn't, because as soon as you do, the market's going to prove you wrong.
But what I'm hearing from you, nitrogen prices are where they are and likely staying there.
Yeah, I think nitrogen probably stays steady here for the next 30, 45 days. A little bit of worry of what happens if we don't have this fall application run. What does that mean for springtime? But ultimately, globally, nitrogen, I'm fearful we're going to see a bullish trend as we move into Q1.
So you actually think that, so if people are out of the market right now, they're, hey, I'm going to wait till spring, maybe use my cash other places. You're thinking higher prices in the spring from now?
I am. I just, when I look around the world, and it's all built on the back of urea. Chinese exports are non-existent. That's usually 5 to 5.5 million ton exported. They've only exported 254,000 through September. You look at, the Russia situation, we could lose that. You look at the EU, the natural gas situation is getting worse, not better. We could lose more production out of Europe and create more demand that way. Egypt had production problems. Brazil has all their production problems because of high natural gas price. I've been asking people, think back to 21-22. Urea was $8,000, $9,000 a ton. I said, think about the supply situation then, and think about today. Which was worse? And they can say, well, 21-22, we thought, and I was like, no, not what we thought. That's emotion. Fundamentally speaking, are we better or worse today or back then? Right. Most everybody I talk to thinks about it, and they're like, we're worse off today than we were back then. And our price of urea is a third of what it was.
I have to ask your colleague, Arlen Suderman at StoneX, about this, but I wonder if nitrogen stays where it is or goes a little bit higher. Do we see more of a consideration of people switching into beans?
Yeah, it's right now, the last time we ran through the numbers, we were still plugged in on 92 million acres of corn. But again, it's middle of November. A lot of things can change. And a lot of people are probably, oh, there's no way we'll hit it. Listen, you can see prices change. You can see the market change. You can see everything change between now and then. You can see it happen 3 times. But as of today, we're still indicating 92 million acres, and that's a lot of nitrogen.
Well, we're at NAFB here in Kansas City, as we mentioned. One of my really underrated cities when it comes to restaurants, I think, in my opinion. I love coming to Kansas City. The most common question that I have had is, hey, what's with all the strikes you guys are having in Canada? What's the most common question that you're getting?
It's about the same thing. What does this mean? And what we've always been telling people, we saw this with the CP railroad strike. Yeah. We said, listen, it's incredibly important to Canada these rail lines run. It's more than likely the government's going to step in and say, listen, you've got to find common ground. You cannot shut down. They're going to force the hand. They did. Vancouver port strikes. The government intervened. I think the workers are figuring out, listen, we've got power. As a whole, we have power. We can put some pressure on them to get a little bit more of what we want. And when one group is able to do it, the rest of them see that and say, hey, if they can do it, why can't we? Yeah. So fortunately, we've not seen any real disruptions from logistics as far as moving ag, fertilizer, anything like that. But the more these things pop up, the more chance we have that one of them is going to stick.
What about the river situation? I was in Arkansas going back about a month ago. The river looked low. Has that changed at all?
It has. Fortunately, all this rain across the Midwest, draft restrictions because of low water levels have been lifted. Everything is back to normal. That doesn't mean that we could go dry again and see low levels. It could stay wet, and all of a sudden we're talking about flood situations again within 2, 3, 4 weeks. Right now, we're in a very good spot.
Awesome stuff. Hey, Josh, really appreciate it. You do great work at StoneX updating people on what's happening in the fertilizer markets. If somebody wants, you still sending out a newsletter?
Yeah. So if you go to Google StoneX Farmer Fertilizer Newsletter, still doing that once a month. The company made me start charging for it. It was a labor of love just because I felt like it really brought some value to the industry. The company was like, hey, you're spending our time, our money, do something. But registration there, StoneX Farmer Fertilizer Newsletter. Otherwise, go to stonex.com. You can find me there.
Well, I would say well worth the cost. And we always appreciate you giving us time and chatting about what's going on in the markets. All the best to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
That was Josh Linville of StoneX, puts out a great fertilizer newsletter. Love having him here on the show. He is really one of the key experts in the North American market when it comes to fertilizer supply, fundamentals, and pricing. Big decisions to be made in for the 2025 growing season. And what we talked about last week on the show, farmers are into cost cutting, of course, because as Josh indicated, some of those smaller margins. And fertilizer is not one of the things that farmers are really focused on cutting back on. Not, because it has such a connection to yield, and you don't want to, as my grandfather would say, save a nickel to spend a dollar, so to speak. So, big decisions for you for the 25 growing season. Hopefully that provided some answers and at least some things to think about. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio with more of Agronomic Monday right after this. Meet new Husky Pre herbicide, Koch's Apex Predator. Fight back against the toughest broadleaf weeds with Western Canada's first Group 27 herbicide for pre-burn and pre-emergent applications in cereals. A potent addition to Roundup, Husky Pre delivers fast-acting and reliable early-season control of broadleaf weeds, including resistant species. If you're tired of all bark, no bite with your cereal pre-burn, ask your local retailer for Husky Pre herbicide today. Always read and follow label directions.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters, and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with KWS Seeds. And we're joined right now by the country manager for Canada with KWS Seeds. It is Kenny Piecharka. Hey, Kenny, how are we doing?
I'm doing excellent, Shaun. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. So, hey, great news story here. Pretty strong yields 2024 when it comes to hybrid rye from KWS, and strong planting numbers for the 25 crop this fall.
Yeah, absolutely, Shaun. It was a great year. We've spent a lot of time investing in people and agronomy, got the crop off to a good start in fall 2023. And then spring 2024, crop came up nice and early, some timely rains, put us in a great position. And Canadian farmers really did well with it. The yields were there that the farmers look for out of hybrid rye. And it extended right into the fall because we had timely moistures again. So farmers put the new crop into the ground. And once again, we saw growth in the crop. So really happy with how farmers are doing with the uptake and with the end-use marketing opportunities.
Yeah, and getting that crop out of the ground as quickly and as swiftly with that optimal plant stand is critical. So how do optimal plant stands in the fall impact the overall yield and performance of hybrid rye? And what are some of the steps that farmers can take to ensure that they hit the targets that they're trying to strive for?
Yeah, well, in reality, hybrid fall rye is an easy crop to grow. As a farmer, the focus has to be seeding. That's your one chance to get the crop started, to get the stand you're looking for. Because once you get that target stand, 80% of the work is done. Because hybrid rye competes with weeds through allelopathy, through aggressive growth. And if you get that stand, you get pollen production, you get high yield, and you get high quality. So the farmer should be totally focused. And the steps that they take are to get the drill ready, get your fertilizer and seed in place. The fall can present you a window of good seeding, or it can present you a window of rain. So being ready to go and a little bit flexible is key. But then when you do seed it, if you're in the West, think canola. Because Canadian farmers in the prairies are used to growing spring crops. And canola, you're going slow at 4.5 miles an hour, 3/4 inch depth. Rye is a shallow seeded crop. And it only takes 4/10 of moisture to get the crop up. So don't chase moisture. Don't seed it like you would a barley. Think more a canola. Whereas in Eastern Canada, where they're used to growing winter wheat, or in the States where winter cereals are common, then you just continue on seeding like you would with those cereals. But establishment is key, because once you have an even stand, this crop is competitive, it's aggressive, and it's winter hardy.
Do you recommend doing plant stand counts in the fall or waiting till the spring? And what are some of those insights tell us once we do the counts?
Yeah, with it being a fall crop, I actually recommend you do both. So fall counts are great to know how you established. And 17 plants per square foot is what you're looking for in this crop. So I recommend that you do a count in the fall. You see how you did. If it was dry, you might be a little short. There was a lot of trash that might have affected the stand. But at least then you benchmark. From that benchmark, you then can do some things with management. And if you got a lot of volunteer crop from the previous, you could spray it. If you're a little short on plants and you know you need to tiller aggressively, you might want to step up your nitrogen in the spring and go in a little bit earlier. But it's also important to consider hybrid rye starts growing earlier than winter wheat in the spring by about 2 weeks. So get your nitrogen on a couple weeks earlier than wheat in general. But once you've done that fall count, you got a benchmark. You can go back in the spring. Once it greens up, go to the same spot and do your counts. That way you can see if you had any winter kill, if you had any freeze thaw effect, or other things affecting the crop.
Yeah, and that benchmarking where you do mark the same spot and you go back to it, like not just do the count, but what I would suggest people do, or what comes to mind, is take a picture. Because then not only do you have the actual numbers, but you also have the visual. And sometimes a picture can tell all the story, right?
100%. It can tell the story. And also you can be proactive. If you've taken that spot even before green up, you can go in say March, before the crop starts to grow. And if you've had a really tough stretch and you're not sure if the crop's going to make it, you can actually go in, clear the snow, dig up plants, and you can cut the top growth and the bottom growth off, put it on wet paper towel in a fridge, and you'll know pretty quickly if the crop survived. And this hybrid rye, it made it through -40 last spring with very little snow cover. It is hardy. It's usually the freeze thaw cycles or wind shearing on knolls if you don't have a lot of trash, things like that. But having the picture is great, Shaun. I like that. And whether you're in retail or you're a farmer or an agronomist, going back to the same spot, measuring apples against apples is key. And farmers, will trust your judgment. If you say, hey, we were X plants in this spot last year, we're this now. This is what we need to do with management. This is why it happened. This is what we can do next year when we see the crop again.
Yeah, what do I want that ideal number to be? I guess that really kind of depends on moisture outlook and soil type and that kind of stuff. But
16 to 18 is your target range. And this crop is seeded on a population. It is a hybrid, and you're seeding 1 million seeds per acre. That's what we go with in Canada.
Okay.
And that will give you your 16 to 18 under normal conditions. Now, if you get into 10 to 13, you can still be okay. The key is going to be distribution. Is it an even crop? By getting additional tillering, are you going to fill in the gaps and get the stand you want? Because you always want to make a decision on a winter crop early in the spring, and rye gets going early. So just know you can push it. It is a true hybrid. You can give it more nitrogen and it will stand and it will perform and it will fill in the gaps. So it's a little different than other cereals that way.
Now, Kenny, if somebody wants more information on KWS Seeds and hybrid rye, where do they go? Who do they talk to?
Yeah, right on. KWS.com/CA is how you get a hold of us. And on that website, you will get direct access. You can get our phone numbers. You'll see our faces. There's also a lot of information on where you can buy the product.
Hey, great stuff. Kenny, thanks a lot for joining us here for this product spotlight on RealAg Radio.
Thanks for having me, Shaun.
We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, right after this.
Joining me today, Mike Schaefer, Field Sales Manager with New Seed. Why should a grower in the upper Midwest be looking at adding the omega-3 canola production system to their lineup?
From a program perspective, we've got delivery windows, which growers ask for. They want to have more control on when they bring their bushels in. There's premiums associated with each window. There is a 10 bushel act of God on this contract. The act of God does not exist a whole lot anymore. We've got an early commit program where you pick up $1.50 with an ITG signed up by December 5th. We really appreciate our grower base, and returning growers will pick up another $1 a hundredweight. We've got a crop input incentive anywhere from $15 to $20 per acre, depending on the amount of acres that you do it. And that is a check back to you during or shortly after the growing season.
Growers in the upper Midwest, where can they go for more information?
A quick Google search, omega-3 canola. There's a box there that you can get an interest form filled out, and then that gets fired off to us FSMs, get you in touch with the right people.
Hey, Real Ag listeners, KWS Seeds is giving away 8 bags of their new CS 4100 LL Liberty Link canola, available to be won by one lucky listener. Visit Cantera.com/RealAg to find out more and to enter. That is Cantera.com/RealAg. 8 free bags. Love it. Great giveaway there for the Real Ag Radio audience. Okay, we're now going to talk to Bergen Nelson. He's with John Deere. I caught up with him last week in Kansas City at the NAFB meeting. And we talked about, in the John Deere booth, some of the harvesting technology that is available now on the John Deere combines. And all of this, there's 2 examples that he uses that are very centered around the making it easier for the operator. And I kind of put it this way. The operator like me, I like running combine, but I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs, and it's not perfect, but I like to operate. Like if you said, hey, do you want to come run combine on Saturday? I would love to. You may want to check my resume a little bit on that, but I would love to. So these are making, and with some of the labor pressures and things like that, this kind of technology is essential. So let's hear my conversation with Bergen Nelson of John Deere. What's your area of specialty at John Deere?
Yeah, I'm the go-to-market manager for harvesting equipment, focusing on combines and front-end equipment, including our new S7 combine as well as X9, and focusing on our corn heads and flex drapers out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you define front-end equipment?
Yeah, front-end equipment would be a corn head, a flex draper, a rigid draper, or a hinge draper. So we have a wide variety of front-end equipment pieces. And you being from Western Canada, we also have our belt pickup, which is very popular in Canada.
Right. Are there any exciting new product features that you're talking to people about?
Yeah, absolutely. In 2025, we introduced our new S7 combine, replacing our S700 series. And as well as with that machine, we introduced new harvest automation, which is both applicable to the X9 combine as well as the S7. And one of those technologies is called predictive ground speed automation, and that is cameras on the front of the combine that look out 28 feet in front of the machine. And we're also pulling in satellite imagery in through Operations Center. And using that data, it allows us to optimize the machine and speed it up and slow it down automatically, which allows us to run the machine at full capacity all day long. And that's contributing to up to a 20% increase in productivity for our customers across the acres they harvest in a season.
I can remember being in the John Deere booth at 2019 Agritechnica when that was one of the medal winners. I can't remember if it was a silver or a gold, but I remember that technology being displayed at that time. It's interesting to see all these years later come to fruition.
Yeah, you have a really good memory, and it finally is here in the marketplace. We had demo machines out this fall in Western Canada and within the U.S. as well, and it was a really exciting harvest season to allow customers to experience it firsthand after we introduced it. And they are seeing that increase in productivity. Another piece on the combine is harvest settings automation, and that system automatically changes the combine settings for the producer. So leveraging both predictive ground speed automation and harvest settings automation, they're seeing increased productivity, but we're also seeing a decrease in fuel consumption with some of the other changes we made on our new combines this year.
So the predictive ground speed, though, does it work better in some crops than others? Or, I'm thinking in more drought conditions. How do some of those factors play? I could see when, bumper crop, there's slight variation, but when we've got some a higher standard deviation of yield, How does it work in those sort of situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say when you do have that higher variance in yield across a field is when predictive ground speed automation is going to shine the most, because if you did not have that technology, you're always going to be on the hydro handle changing speed from, say, 2.5 miles per hour to 5 mile an hour as you're going in and out of good crop. And so that gets tiring throughout the day, and you're trying to maintain peak performance of the machine by running in 100% engine load. And so predictive ground speed automation in those varying conditions allows the machine to do that all automatically. We maintain running the machine at peak performance, and the customer doesn't have to constantly watch what they're doing as far as controlling engine speed and throughput of the machine. So it's a big win in those scenarios for sure.
On the auto settings, which I call the settings for operators like me, who always feel that we're never very good at setting the combine. How does it, is it adjusting constantly, or is it adjusting, maybe once an hour? Like, how often are those settings moving?
Yeah, there's no doubt that labor challenges is a big factor for some of our customers, and this technology does allow them to put a less skilled operator in the cab.
Like me.
Yeah. And so the system, Harvest Settings Automation, is using loss sensors and other inputs from the combine, but the user has the ability to set their preference with 3 different areas: broken grain, foreign material. And based off of where they set those inputs, the machine's going to optimize the performance. So if they want to make sure that they're capturing all the grain and they really want to focus on grain loss, the machine's going to make changes to do that. And it's changing your rotor speed, your concave clearance, your sieve and chaffer and fan speed all automatically as soon as you start harvesting. And we also base the initial starting settings on geolocation. So if a producer is running in Western Canada or, say, Southern Illinois, we can tailor the starting settings to give them the best possible outcome, and then they can fine-tune it from there.
I was just going to ask you, are multiple machines across multiple customers sort of, I was going to call like a cloud compute, like they're working together to find those optimal settings?
So we do have in-field data sharing, which allows us to move and share guidance lines and yield coverage between machines in an actual field. But then from a producer's phone, they can use the operations center mobile, and they can see the individual combine settings on each machine as well as how they're performing and if that machine's using automation or not. And so they can go in there and actually change the settings per machine to make sure that they can optimize their fleet and make sure they're all running at the same.
Okay, so we got predictive ground speed. We've got auto settings. We're not far from not having to have somebody actually in that cab, right? Like that seems more of a reality with this kind of technology.
It's definitely the reality. This year, when we look at what we've launched and what we've had in the past, I like to call it the ultimate combine experience. And really, through the automation we've talked about here today, also including machine sync, which helps a customer automatically unload on the go and sync up with their grain cart, auto track turn automation, in-field data sharing, the whole suite of technology, not just focusing on the combine. We are fully automating the process right now, but we still need to have a customer in the seat. But it's truly amazing.
One last question on the auto settings. Obviously, there's operator override and your ability to change it based on your own experiences and your own knowledge. You can kind of work together with the computer to find that top-end setting?
Yeah, that's correct. And the nice thing about this system right now is they can go in there and say they don't want the system to change rotor speed. They can uncheck that box. And so the automation system will do everything else, but they'll let the producer run the rotor speed that they want, which gives them the ability to tailor the system to their needs or their crops. And so it's been a fantastic win for us this year. And like I said, customers are seeing an increase in productivity in using this automation. So it's important for them to turn it on and leave it on, and they'll see the benefits on their operation.
Hey, Bergen, great stuff. You made me sound like I know something about combines. A fantastic technology. This is technology for people like me, like I said. So, hey, enjoy the rest of National Association of Farm Broadcasters meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. Thanks for being here. It's been great to talk with you, and have a great day.
Conceptually, this kind of technology makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the auto settings on the combine always evolving and change because the temperature outside, the wind, the humidity, for sure, big factors in how that combine does its job. And let's be honest, probably maybe not as much today, but, back in our grandma and grandfather's years, they probably didn't adjust that combine as much as they should have. Now, they were a lot more in tune with the machine because you could really feel how that combine was working, basically your butt in the seat. And obviously some people still talk about how, they like to have silence in the combine cab because they like to hear, but those things are a little bit different than, maybe say 40 years ago when you were a lot more in tune with that machine just based on the setting of the cab and what that experience was like, especially the open cab where you're sneezing to death all day. But even like that auto setting on the speed, that is really fascinating. Trying to maximize that machine to be full at total capacity all the time as much as possible. Be interested to see just the success of that and how that takes on, and if people really like that, or do they see the speeding up and slowing down? Do they find it kind of annoying? It'd be interesting to get some farmer feedback on that. But very cool technology. Would love your thoughts on it. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. When we come back on Real Ag Radio, we're going to talk about the use of artificial intelligence in agronomy right after this.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
And welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on Agronomic Monday. We can't talk about agronomics without thinking about varieties. Take your oat game to the next level with CDC Endure from Alliance Seed, one of the top yielding varieties in Prairie Provincial Yield Trials, available from authorized Alliance Seed retailers. Visit allianceseed.com for more information. Also, when I was at NAFB last week, I had a chance to talk to Charles Barron, one of the co-founders and chief marketing officer with FBN. I always like catching up with Charles. We talked about AI in agronomy, and they have created their own AI robot Norm. Now, there's other options out there as well, but we wanted to chat about the overall concept of the use of artificial intelligence to help us to be more informed agronomists. This could work very well, but if the prompt is faulty, it can go badly, and that's bad information. Garbage in, garbage out, so to speak. Here's my conversation with Charles Barron of FBN.
Charles, how are we doing? Good to be with you, Shaun.
Okay, you got a lot of, obviously, FBN always has a wide swath of stuff that's going on. I want to talk to you about this AI agronomy advisor. Talk about the tool and some of the things that it does.
Well, this past year we built Norm, named after Norman Borlaug, and that's our AI ag advisor. And the way to think about it is, instead of Googling something and trying to find the answer and then digging around in websites, you can talk to AI. You can ask it a question in plain English, and it'll give you a response in plain English, and it will do all the research and interpretation of all the information online, and specifically trained on specific agronomic models and ag intelligence that FBN's developed to give you a better answer. And so we've built Norm. It's free to use for FBN members. You can go on the website, join FBN, or you can use it. It's usually, you can find it on any individual chemical page. There'll be a little button that says Get Help, and you can talk to the AI advisor. Now, Norm can actually pass an agronomy exam. It is the best model in ag. It's been tested against Google and Facebook and other models, and so by giving it ag-specific training it on our data as well as other open source or public extension data, government research data, university data, etc., it is able to give better responses and better answers to growers than other AI models out there like ChatGPT.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what's the difference between me going into ChatGPT and having a pretty good prompt and getting some advice from just like a ChatGPT versus something like Norm?
The basic difference is ChatGPT is going to be just going to be typically going off what's on the internet, and there's a lot of specific ag knowledge or specific ag logic which would not be available on the internet. So let's take an example like chemical mixing logic or product compatibility logic, or reading chemical labels. So we've specifically trained Norm on well over 6,000 chemical labels on the market. So Norm can help a grower interpret a product, go through the complex task of going through the label and understanding what the legal restrictions are, what your plant back interval is going to be, what your rain fast period is going to be, how to mix that product, which adjuvants can go with that product. So it can be a full service, basically chem advisor to you, and certainly gets you that frontline kind of question when a grower's got a hot question in the field or late at night. And what a lot of farmers often say is, hey, this is great. It's 10 at night or 11 at night. I don't want to call my agronomist. I can go on FBN, I can use Norm, and I can figure out most, if not all, of what I need to know.
Do you see it replacing people or being more of an assister, like a tool for people to use to get to get answers for customers faster?
It's going to augment people, right? It's not going to replace the need for human interpretation or advice or some of the more subjective decision making that you have to make, right? But it is like having a superpower, okay? Because now at 24 hours a day, right on your app, or you can even text with Norm and chat with it via text message. You can use it to answer questions about anything. So we've trained it on chemistry because we have the most data around that. But you can use it on machinery. You can use it on seed. You can use it on animal health and livestock issues. You can use it on grain marketing. And it's just tremendous. So it's like having, a PhD assistant just in your pocket that you can talk to whenever you want for free. It's pretty remarkable. And again, AI is just going to get better and better as models get smarter and as we learn more and as we're better able to train them and adapt information. So this is the early innings, and you just say, okay, it's now like I've got a PhD in my pocket who I can go to, and what's that going to be in a year when we've been able to advance the models a little further and train it on better data.
What's been the uptake from farmers and feedback?
Very, very, lots of curiosity. So we've had well over 22,000 questions to Norm from growers, which is really tremendous. And you'll see, when farmers interact with it, they'll, ask many questions. One of the biggest things I would just recommend to people when you use AI is it's not Google where you put in an answer and then you find websites. You keep talking to it. And if you don't get the initial response you're looking for, you keep asking it or you keep pushing it and you say, hey, Norm, no, this isn't what I'm looking for. Be more specific, right? And it'll say, okay, thank you. Here's the more specific answer, right? So you can be rude to the AI and don't feel bad about it.
There's nothing better than having that kind of a rude conversation sometimes. Like, you don't know what you're talking about and seeing some of the answers. It's a lot of fun. I do that with the Snapchat AI all the time. Okay, one of the questions I wanted to ask you about it is it text only or can we upload pictures, like identification of a weed, things like that?
Right now it's text only. You can actually text message with Norm, or you go on fbn.com/asknorm, /Norm. And you can talk to it. Again, you can go on FBN to any of the chemical pages and you'll find a button for Norm, or you find it via the FBN Analyze section where it's in there as Norm.
We're talking to Charles Barron from FBN. Charles, one of the things I wanted to ask you about as well is farmers' uptake to buying crop protection products and seed online. Okay, this is the wheelhouse that FBN lives in. Have you seen an increase in business over the past number of years?
Well, absolutely. FBN's grown, every year, and we've grown our volume of products that purchased, so I think farmers are more and more used to doing it now. Certainly when we started about 7 years ago, and in Canada, I think this will be our 7th year. Yeah. It was more of a novel concept, and am I going to feel comfortable spending $100,000 or $50,000 online? And now, as people have seen, hey, this really works. And when I click buy, then a truck shows up to my farm. Then I think there's less apprehension about that. This is going to work as I expected. In the early days, people I think were very nervous about. Oh, geez, I want to talk to somebody before I spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, right? We've seen $1 million shopping carts that people have just clicked and checked out. So I think people's mentality has come a long way of comfort around it. We've built a phenomenal logistics network behind FBN.
That's the key.
That's the whole key. So for me to have confidence in that purchase, you have to know that it's going to show up as you expect, when you expect. And when you go on the FBN website, you'll see when that product can get to the farm. And that's the same expectation that people have developed, from going on Amazon and seeing that, okay, that can get to me tomorrow or in 2 days. And so we built that same kind of logic. Now that's really, really hard to do, and no one else in agriculture can do that because we have to have deep intelligence in our inventory, our warehouses, where those products are, if a product is on its way from international and going to be arriving soon, and then where are the locations of our trucks and what our shipping schedules are going to be. So you have to have all that intelligence, and then what happens is every time a farm logs on, we rerun those calculations, which is basically it's hundreds of thousands of optimizations to say, okay, the fastest time we can get that product to you is tomorrow or 3 days from now or 4 days from now. So we try to be as accurate as possible and give farmers as much confidence when they go to purchase.
Do you feel the current economic environment in agriculture, whether that's Canada or the U.S., is it more conducive to your operation?
Well, I think right now, here's what being online and providing transparency really helps growers with. One, it provides an enormous amount of trust and confidence that this is the best deal that we're basically putting forward or able to put forward. And I think with a lot of farmers, it's how do I know that I'm getting a good price when I'm getting quoted from somebody, right? If I'm not shopping around or I don't know how much competition I actually have locally. So number one, go on and drill down on FBN and you will see, how those prices compare to what you have. Number two, we have a whole new system called our shopping list where you upload an invoice from your current supplier and we will build out a quote for you. You'll build out a savings analysis and you'll see exactly how much you can save in near real time with FBN, and then click. You can add all that product to the cart, and it'll show you you're going to save $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, and then boom, you can make that decision. So I think the most important thing when times are tight like they are right now is do your homework, sharpen your pencil, make sure you're going on FBN. You're taking advantage of our price transparency and you're taking advantage of our intelligence tools, and then knowing that you can purchase with a lot of confidence with FBN. We have 0% financing programs. We try to make it as easy as possible for a grower to buy early, lock in the best prices of the year, and when your input costs are locked in, then you can market with a lot more certainty throughout the year.
Perfect stuff. Okay, Charles, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks, Sean. Good to be with you.
That was Charles Barron from FBN. They have some Cyber Days going on as well in both Canada and the U.S., so you should check that out. Charles is pretty excited about that and some special deals they have on FBN product. Interesting. Yeah, I think there's a real place here for AI in terms of like identification, decision making. It does make a lot of sense. There's a lot of companies that are working on it. Does it? And I think, again, too many times we get trapped in this, well, yeah, but a person's going to be better. Well, first of all, a person's not totally accurate. Two, it's not about, they can actually work in coexistence incredibly effectively. So if you have a super smart agronomist, right, or you yourself, it doesn't have to be somebody that you've hired out, but you combine that knowledge on top of some AI capabilities, then you're really rocking. I think it's that 1 + 1 = 3, 4 kind of scenario with this kind of stuff. And would love your opinion on it. What do you think? shaney@realagriculture.com is my email address. You can also find Real Agriculture across all different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. And of course, we'll be back again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.